Medieval India, page number 140, chapter number 12. Humayun's conquest of Gujarat and his tussle with Sher Shah. Humayun succeeded Babur in December 1530 at the young age of 23. He had to grapple with a number of problems left behind by Babur. The administration had not yet been consolidated and the finances were precarious. The Afghans had not been subdued and were nursing the hope of expelling the Mughals from India. Finally, there was a Timurid legacy of partitioning the empire among all the brothers. Babur had counselled Humayun to deal kindly with his brothers, but had not favoured the partitioning of the infant Mughal empire, which would have been disastrous. When Humayun ascended to the throne at Agra, the empire included Kabul and Kandahar. While there was loose control over Badakhshan beyond the Hindu Kush mountains, Kabul and Kandahar were under the charge of Humayun's younger brother Kamran. It was only natural that they should remain in his charge. It was only natural that they should remain in his charge. However, Kamran was not satisfied with these poverty-stricken areas. He marched on Lahore and Multan and occupied them. Humayun, who was busy elsewhere and did not want to start a civil war, had little opinion but to agree. Kamran accepted the suzerainty of Humayun and promised to help him whenever necessary. Kamran's action created the apprehension that the other brothers of Humayun might also follow the same path whenever an opportunity arose. However, the granting of the Punjab and Multan to Kamran had the immediate advantage that Humayun was free to devote his attention to the eastern parts without having to bother about his western frontier. Apart from these, Humayun had to deal with the rapid growth of the power of Afghans in the east and the growing power and sweep of Bahadur Shah, the ruler of Gujarat. At the outset, Humayun was inclined to consider the Afghan danger to be more serious of the two. In 1532, at a place called Dora, he defeated the Afghan forces which had conquered Bihar and overrun Jaunpur in eastern Uttar Pradesh. After his success, Humayun besieged Chunar. This powerful fort commanded the land and the river route between Agra and the east, and was known as the gateway of eastern India. It had recently come in the possession of an Afghan Sardar, Sher Khan, who had become the most powerful ruler of the Afghan Sardars. After the siege of Chunar had gone on for 4 months, Sher Khan persuaded Humayun to allow him to retain possession of the fort. In return, he promised to be loyal to the Mughals and sent one of his sons to Humayun as a hostage. Humayun accepted the offer because he was anxious to return to Agra. The rapid increase of the power of Bahadur Shah of Gujarat and his activities in the areas bordering Agra had alarmed him. He was not prepared to continue the siege of Chunar under the command of a noble, since that would have meant dividing his forces. Bahadur Shah, who was of almost the same age as Humayun, was an able and ambitious ruler. Ascending the throne in 1526, he first overran and conquered Malwa. He then turned to Rajasthan and besieged Chittor. Soon he reduced the Rajput defenders to sore straits. According to some later legends, Rani Karnavati, the widow of Rana Sanga, sent a Rakhi to Humayun seeking his help, and Humayun gallantly responded. No contemporary writer has mentioned the story, and it may not be true. However, it is a fact that Humayun moved from Agra to Gwalior, and due to the fear of Mughal intervention, Bahadur Shah patched up a treaty with Rana, leaving the fort in his hands after extracting a large indemnity in cash and kind. During the next year and a half, Humayun spent his time in building a new city at Delhi, which was named Din Pana. He organized many grand feasts and festivities during the period. Humayun has been blamed for wasting valuable time in these activities, while Sher Khan was steadily augmenting his power in the east. It has also been said that Humayun's inactivity was due to his habit of taking opium. Neither of these charges are fully true. Babur had continued to use opium after he gave up wine. Humayun took opium occasionally in place or in addition to wine, as did many of his nobles. But neither Babur nor Humayun was an opium addict. The building of Deen Pana was meant to impress friends and foes alike. It could also serve as a capital in case Agra was threatened by Bahadur Shah, who in the meantime had conquered Ajmer and overrun eastern Rajasthan. Bahadur Shah offered a still greater challenge to Humayun. He made his court a refuge of all those who feared and hated the Mughals. He had again invested Chittor and simultaneously supplied arms to men to Tatar Khan, a cousin of Ibrahim Lodi. Tatar Khan was to invade Agra with a force of 40,000, while diversions were to be made in the north and the east. Humayun easily defeated the challenge posed by Tatar Khan. The Afghan forces melted away at the approach of the Mughals, and Tatar Khan defeated and killed. Determined to end the threat from Bahadur Shah's side for once for all, Humayun now invaded Malwa. In the struggle which followed, Humayun showed considerable military skill and remarkable personal valor. Bahadur Shah did not dare to face the Mughals. He abandoned Chittor, which he had captured, and his fortified camp and fled to Mandu after spiking his guns, but leaving behind all his rich equipage. Humayun was hot on his heels. He invested the fortress of Mandu and captured it without much opposition. Bahadur Shah fled from Mandu to Champaner. A small party scaled the fort of Champaner by a path considered inaccessible. Humayun was the 41st man to scale the walls. Bahadur Shah now fled to Ahmedabad and finally to Kathiawar. Thus, the rich provinces of Malwa and Gujarat, as well as the large treasure hoarded by the Gujarat rulers at Mandu and Champaner, fell into the hands of Humayun. Both Gujarat and Malwa were lost as quickly as they had been gained. After the victory, Humayun placed Gujarat under the command of his younger brother, Askari, and then retired to Mandu, which was centrally located and enjoyed a fine climate. The major problem was the deep attachment of the people to the Gujarati rule. Askari was inexperienced, and the Mughal nobles were mutually divided. A series of popular uprisings, military actions by Bahadur Shah's nobles, and a rapid revival of Bahadur Shah's power unnerved Askari. He fell back upon Champaner but received no help from the commander of the fort who doubted his intentions. Unwilling to face Humayun at the Mundu, he decided to return to Agra. This immediately raised the fear that he might try to displace Humayun from Agra or attempt to carve out a separate empire for himself. Deciding to take no chances, Humayun abandoned Malwa and moved after Askari by forced marches. He overtook Askari in Rajasthan, and the two brothers were reconciled and returned to Agra. Meanwhile, both Gujarat and Malwa were lost. Thank you everyone for tuning in. In the next part, we'll start with the last paragraph on page number 141 on this chapter number 12. Do share and subscribe the channel for more videos like this, and on your screen you would see some playlists and the link to the previous video. Do watch them and keep supporting us. Thank you everyone for tuning in.